Hey, hi, I'm Judi Vitale here to discuss Venus in Gemini in 2012. This year, Venus is really going to be very involved with Mercury during her trip to Gemini. You have to look at it like this. When a planet goes into a sign, it takes on the characteristics of that sign, and it also has to interact with the host of that sign. In this case, Gemini is hosted by Mercury. Here we are, the day before Mercury goes direct, and Venus is moving into Gemini. Venus, while she is in Gemini, is going to go retrograde. So rather than just spending her a few weeks to a month in a sign, she's going to be there all the way until August the 7th. So in the meantime, she will be going backwards through Gemini to really give us a dose of what Venus in Gemini feels like. In addition to that, kind of interestingly, just as Venus comes out of Gemini, Mercury will just be ending another retrograde period. So just think how closely they're affiliated right now. Venus and Mercury operate very close to the sun. They move like very close to our suns. So either we have these planets in the same sign with our sun, or one, or sometimes in some cases where the sun's really late in the sign, 2 signs away. Very, very close together. So they're very personal to us. Mercury being our thoughts and Venus being the way that we express our feelings. Venus in Gemini is not the same as Venus in Taurus by any stretch of the imagination. Venus in Taurus is all sensual and happy and, pleased to just be pleased. But while in Gemini, Venus takes on a more kind of distant characteristic. I can speak to this because I have Venus in Gemini, and what it does for me is that it enables me to find cute and funny and pretty ways of expressing myself. But in my personal relationships, often the people who are involved with me don't always feel as though they have my full attention, because they probably don't. My affections are torn in several different directions because of Gemini's nature. Gemini's nature is to scatter thoughts and to bring everything in so that it can be passed on, but it is never really kept in one spot. So the Gemini energy, when it's absorbed by Venus, can have that effect. So during this whole time period, from now through August the 8th, we're going to be experiencing Venus in Gemini, so you get to feel like me. Ha ha ha. Well, I hope that you don't get quite as bad as someone with Venus in Gemini. We're famous for loving 2 people at the same time, for not being very deep in terms of our emotions, and it's all because it's just really not possible for someone with Venus in Gemini to associate what they consider to be an air kind of thing, a thought, with what is actually, an earth kind of bondage with another person. It's an anomaly to Venus in Gemini to be attached to someone because they feel that happiness is detachment, so they don't equate the two. Venus will make some other interesting aspects with other planets during this time period, so let me give you a little taste of it. Venus square Neptune as soon as April the 5th, and this is really nice for romance because, you just sort of like see somebody without all of their flaws. However, be careful, because sometimes people can go into a relationship like that and come out really feeling how many flaws the other person has. Venus is going to square Mars twice during this time while she's in Gemini, because Mars is also retrograde now in the sign of Virgo, which is Mercury's other sign, interestingly enough. So maybe that's why this last Mercury retrograde was so noticeable. But anyway, the first one there on the 7th of April is, going to be a little bit of tension in love affairs. So be aware of that. That's Saturday coming, and you can always count on some good make-up sex when you have Venus square Mars. Venus sextile Uranus on April the 9th is a sudden attraction. And although it could be sudden, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be deep. Then Mars will go direct on April the 13th. Yay, that's good because we can move forward with our projects. But then Venus goes retrograde on May the 15th. So when that occurs, this is a time when another thing that happens during Venus retrograde is like people from the past come back into our lives. So you're going to hear from those exes that you really don't want to hear from, and maybe in some cases you will want to hear from them. And if you do, you can explore the relationship and see if there's any chance for a reconciliation, some sort of maybe a resolution or a forgiveness or even a continuation. Who knows? That's up to you. We have Venus square Mars again on June the 4th, on the same day with a lunar eclipse and Neptune's station to retrograde. And that lunar eclipse is going to take place in Sagittarius, which is opposite Gemini. So that's why I'm making such a big deal about this date. It's going to be like a very big day. It's a full moon. Sun will conjunct Venus on June the 5th, and then Venus will go stationary to direct on June the 27th. Venus will square Uranus again on July the 5th. And then finally, Venus will go into Cancer on August the 7th. So I suppose we'll be talking about Venus in Cancer at that point, which is a whole different kind of thing. But, you know, right now, just get used to the fact that even in like those deep, loving relationships, the Venus in Gemini keeps everything light, superficial, and easy. And try a little harder to think about how we can express ourselves both intellectually and sensually in all of our friendships, working relationships, and of course our romantic bonds. Okay? So if you have any questions or comments about Venus and Gemini or anything astrology, please send them along to me. Judi, Judi, @readthestars.com.